Hello, everyone. My name is Alea Fields, and joining me today are Eskandar Gurmash and Tareem Asgar. Our presentation is called The Right of People with Disabilities to Parent. We'll be covering the history of injustice and parenting exclusions faced by people with disabilities, the discrimination and inequities parents with disabilities face today, ADA protections, advocacy efforts working to protect parents with disabilities from child welfare involvement, and policy proposals aimed at reducing restrictions and public assistance for pregnant people. We will also be exploring how disability justice and reproductive justice are connected around the right to parent. The situation that parents who are disabled face today did not appear overnight. It has roots going back to the late 1800s and early 1900s, when the eugenics movement shaped how this country thought about disability. The belief at the time was that people who are disabled should not reproduce or raise children, and that belief was written into law and put into practice across the country. In 1927, the Supreme Court ruled in Buck v. Bell that the forced sterilization of people who are disabled was constitutional. By the 1970s, more than 60,000 people who are disabled had been sterilized without their consent. When the child welfare system was established in the 1960s, it reflected those same values. A parent's disability became grounds for questioning their fitness, not because of their actions, but because of their identity. And rather than addressing what was actually putting families at risk, things like poverty and discrimination, the system consistently fell short. What is important to understand is that none of this was based on evidence. It was based on assumptions about people who are disabled that were written into law and repeated across decades. So, what does this look like today? Parents with disabilities are encountering discrimination throughout the child welfare process, before, during, and after any formal case. To give you a sense of how widespread these attitudes are, I want to read a couple of comments from TikTok, as well as some titles from articles. One person commented, "This should be illegal. If they know that the child would be extremely deformed and have to live like that, they should either be forced to adopt or abort, because that is child abuse." Another person commented, "And let me guess, the new baby will be on disability. And who pays for this? I get it, but not what people who care do." A title of an article said, "Disabled parents face bias and loss of kids." These reflect the kind of attitudes that parents with disabilities are up against, not just online, but in institutions meant to support families. We are presenting this issue through a reproductive justice lens. Reproductive justice is about more than pregnancy and birth. It includes the right to raise your children in a safe environment, free from state interference. When we look at the history of people with disabilities in this country, forced sterilization, institutionalization, and a disproportionate removal of their children, we're looking at a sustained pattern of the state deciding who is allowed to have a family. That is exactly what reproductive justice has always pushed back against. Disability justice and reproductive justice are addressing the same question. Who gets to decide what a family looks like? And who has historically been excluded from that right?
Hi everyone, my name is Eskandar and I'm going to be going through some of the protections to prevent discrimination against parents with disabilities and then what actually happens in practice. So the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, has several provisions that protect disabled parents from discrimination. In practice, the ADA prohibits family courts and state family regulation agencies from making child custody decisions on the basis of generalized assumptions about disability, relegating parents with disabilities to lesser services and opportunities, imposing overprotective or unnecessary restrictive rules, and failing to reasonably modify policies, practices, and procedures. Though these provisions exist, in reality, parents with disabilities face many injustices when it comes to family court, as I'll outline in the next slide. And as we learned through this course, provisions like this don't actually mean anything if they're not enforced and show up in the daily realities of the people that they are meant to protect. To strengthen these ADA provisions in 2023, U.S. Representative Sheila Sherfellis McCormick in Florida introduced the Equality for Families with Disabilities Act. This bill would require states to develop procedural safeguards and parenting services for people with disabilities at all stages of a family regulation case. If this bill were to become law, it could require states to engage in much needed reform and facilitate reflection on systemic discrimination. So, getting into the specific discrimination against parents with disabilities, and before I do that, I just want to define a term that I will be using, IDD, or intellectual and developmental disabilities. These are conditions that begin before the age of 22 and are lifelong and cause impairments in both mental abilities and everyday functioning. And examples of IDDs include autism, Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, and fetal alcohol syndrome. So, the National Council on Disability has documented that once in the system, parents with an IDD experience removal of their children at a rate of 40 to 80%. Families led by parents with IDD are among those least likely to get the help and support that they need. And further, limited financial resources also make it difficult, if not impossible, for many parents with disabilities to obtain expert witnesses in their court cases who are extremely important and often determinative in custody cases. There's also negativity and a lack of cultural competence around disability and just stark ableism that's baked into the legal justice system. This is reflected in language appearing in unpublished court documents and evaluations of disabled parents. So there's been judges that write things such as parents are afflicted with dwarfism or wheelchair bound or suffer from physical disability. And this kind of language really stigmatizes parents with disabilities and unjustly labels them as unfit to care for their children. I've touched on the inequities that parents with disabilities face, and now I want to speak specifically on targeted discrimination against unhoused Black and immigrant parents with disabilities. Unhoused parents with disabilities face significant challenges in the housing system baked with ableism in terms of finding housing and shelters that meet their accommodation needs. Black parents with disabilities face the compounding factors of systemic racism and ableism in the legal system and in their daily lives with having autonomy over their children. Immigrant parents, especially now, face intense fear accessing the legal justice system because of fear around criminalization around their immigration status. The reproductive justice approach will take into account the specific barriers impacting these groups and create policies rooted in intersectionality, autonomy, and improved access and equity.
Hi everyone, my name is Tareem and I'm going to discuss policy and advocacy for parents with disabilities. First, I wanted to highlight several organizations that support parents with disabilities and advocate for their parenting rights. The Disabled Parenting Project, which is part of the National Research Center for Parents with Disabilities, provides an online space where disabled parents and individuals considering parenthood can share experiences, access resources, and build community. The organization also contributes to research and policy efforts aimed at addressing discrimination and disparities faced by disabled parents. Another organization called Through the Looking Glass provides direct services for parents and grandparents with disabilities. Their work includes adaptive baby care equipment, individualized parenting support, and advocacy for parents involved in child custody cases. Their work is especially important because people with disabilities face disproportionately high rates of child removal due to stigma and lack of accommodations. Lastly, Disability Rights New York provides free legal and advocacy services to individuals with disabilities and works to protect their civil rights and ability to fully participate in community life. Organizations like these demonstrate that parenting support should focus on accessibility and accommodation rather than questioning whether people with disabilities should become parents at all. As touched on earlier, another common advocacy effort among these organizations is protecting parents with disabilities from discriminatory involvement with child welfare systems. Many parents with disabilities face increased scrutiny due to stereotypes and assumptions about their ability to safely raise children. Studies have shown that parents with disabilities are more likely to be reported to child welfare agencies for abuse or neglect and are also more likely to have their children removed from their care compared to parents without disabilities. However, there is little evidence proving that parents with disabilities are inherently more likely to abuse or neglect their children. One important example is the landmark case of Sarah Gordon, a mother with mild intellectual disability whose newborn was removed due to concerns about her parenting abilities. After repeatedly requesting appropriate accommodations and supportive services, Gordon filed a complaint, arguing that the child welfare agency had discriminated against her because of her disability. The case ultimately led to findings of disability discrimination and contributed to new policy reforms in Massachusetts, including disability-focused trainings and the appointment of a statewide disability coordinator. However, many of these initiatives were temporary and remained limited to only one state. This highlights the need for broader nationwide protections, professional training, and disability accommodations within child welfare systems to ensure that parents with disabilities are not unfairly separated from the children based on stigma rather than evidence of harm. Next, I'm going to talk about broader limitations for pregnant women within federal, state, and local public benefit systems. Public assistance programs include the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, otherwise known as SNAP, and cash assistance. For both of these programs, there are restrictions on when benefits changes occur, if they occur at all. For example, cash assistance only increases by additional $50 once the mother provides proof that she is at least 4 months pregnant. For SNAP, household benefits do not increase until after the child is born, although pregnant people may qualify for additional nutritional support through WIC. These restrictions can create a wide range of issues, including financial strain, increased risk of nutritional deficiencies, and delays in adding a child to benefits case due to processing times and documentation requirements. Pregnancy is an experience that affects people differently, and to support healthy births, individuals relying on public benefits should feel more secure in knowing that they'll have reliable access to food and financial support. One proposed solution is to redefine household eligibility to include unborn children so that both SNAP and cash assistance benefits increase early in pregnancy to better support maternal and fetal health. Additionally, for individuals giving birth in hospital settings, hospital could help coordinate updates to benefit cases to reduce delays in processing after birth. It is also important to recognize that these barriers affect all people capable of becoming pregnant and are not limited solely to individuals with disabilities.